DJ LeRoy.
NightWatchman, how you been, buddy?
Hey man, summertime and the living is easy.
Absolutely. Now, tell me, NightWatchman, you were watching, of course, the Olympics.
Oh,
Tell me that.
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. Some great performances, and we're
hmm
going to get into talking about some of the sports activity this summer, including the Olympics. But first and foremost, I think we need to introduce our guest.
Hold on,
And
hold on, hold on. Haven't we had this guy before? And he's still a
absolutely.
guest? I thought he was just third wheel.
Oh yeah, you're right, right. Yeah, we're gonna have to. He's a Padawan, you know. He's
That's right.
got to clean up the studio and carry our microphones. Yeah, watch on, wash off. No, just kidding.
Glenn
Glenn
Gilliam.
Gilliam is in the house.
Hey, look, I'm glad you guys woke me off the couch. I've been waiting for a couple of weeks to get back on.
Yeah,
Wow, wow.
absolutely.
Third wheel, I like put that under the Chiron.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
So
a
I
good look.
mean, bottom line, we know that you know just about any and everything about sports. As a matter of fact, with your help, we started a group not only on what is that? I think not Facebook. I think it was just really just a regular chat on F1. All
Oh
right.
yeah.
Okay. And then sure enough, and then you brought that fire to Clubhouse.
Oh well. Needless to say, Clubhouse was on fire already. I just happen to know you guys, so
Okay.
it's all the way around, which is great.
But one of the things that that really kind of impressed me, Glenn, was really the passion and the perseverance that you've shown in seeing that one of the tennis greats of all time, Althea Gibson, being recognized in her home of Harlem. That's
Althea
it. Yeah.
first. That's right.
Well, yeah. Look, people probably think I sleep in this all the time because every time I'm on the show, I'm probably sporting it. But no,
Mhm.
yeah, no. It's funny because there's so many great things that are happening. COVID, needless to say, gave tennis a shot in the arm. I mean, it really brought the game back in the sense of, I think, 4 million. It's been numbered now to about 4 million people have either entered the game for the first time or re-entered as far as playing. And that kind of activity has been absolutely huge in terms of the lifeline for tennis mainstream wise and just locally. It was a perfect answer for being outside and socially distant activity. So it really it worked out really well. And then obviously our efforts, which it's been great as far as getting the co-naming up in Harlem
hmm
in your neighborhood. And
Well, as a matter of fact, Glenn, give us that overview and that process in terms of getting that going.
yeah, I mean, well, I'll just say as briefly as I can. We've gotten approval from the community board, which was the first and most important hurdle. It's been in front of Councilman Perkins, and of course, because his seat may be in jeopardy, and maybe you guys can give me an
Oh,
update.
his seat is, he's out of that seat.
He's out of there. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, but he had. Sorry to hear that, Councilman Perkins. Sorry to hear that, Councilman Perkins. You had a good run. Yeah, it was approved, to my understanding, by his office, and was going to be put in front of City Council for what essentially is a formality in terms of them putting their fingerprints on it, especially when it's somebody of this stature. So we actually are just awaiting notification from the Department of Transportation when the actual reveal can take place. And we're not looking to rush anything. Obviously, being in the midst of this pandemic still gives us some pause as far as gathering folks for a celebration until probably 2022 is what I'm really considering. And I think the family feels the same way. I think it's important that we allow as many people to be able to be in attendance and partake as possible.
And
First of 2020.
it would be great if we could have some of today's tennis stars to actually attend that.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, the effort's going to be as we're going to be doing with a lot of these projects, trying to galvanize all the people who love the game and who want to see this legacy, along with so many others. I mean, that's kind of been my my call for the last 10 years or so is just trying to get recognition for Black legacy and Black contribution. And I mean, obviously no small piece of it, but as we'll talk about, I guess, in a little bit, you know, honoring the folks that are still here, thankfully, but definitely giving props to the ones that came before, because unfortunately this millennial generation doesn't have as good a grasp on, you know, really the icons that came before.
Yeah.
And we're only now being able to even tell their stories properly. I mean,
right.
1619 Project, I mean, all of the things that have come out in the last several years, which of course always get a Heisman from the right and from folks who don't want to know the truth. So yeah, it's always a struggle and always battle, and so grateful for platforms like this where you guys get to bring folks to the table and talk about it.
Absolutely. It's funny enough, NightWatchman was going to hang out with me yesterday at an event at the Schomburg honoring former Mayor David Dinkins.
Oh boy, where's that? I lost my email. What, Curtis? Did you give the brother a heads up?
Night Watchman, I knew that there would be fire once I said that. I knew this. All right,
that's why you're wearing your asbestos underwear, right?
You know, yeah, you got that right. So no, I was going to say that one thing that must be said about the former mayor is that, I mean, in terms of his being a fan, no doubt, of tennis, bar none, but also in terms of totally revitalizing and building the tennis facility out there, Arthur Ashe Stadium. I mean, it's incredible. I did not realize that the U.S. Open brings in more than the marathon or any sporting event in New York City.
I mean, it may be the largest single sporting event in the country. This block of time, those 3 weeks basically with qualies and then the 2 weeks of the actual main draw, they pull in about $400 million. No small feat. And, you know, you're talking about a huge loss for them last year, but the opportunity to highlight Black Lives Matter and the movement that was going on at the time, obviously Naomi Osaka's prominence in that, and the fact that she's just amazing. She came there with an objective to just give some exposure, and said she brought 7 masks and got to wear them all because she won the tournament. So, I mean, masks obviously symbolizing the victims of police brutality. Really, just she's having a moment, and I don't want to take it anywhere we're not, but that's definitely something to highlight, considering what she brought to the table earlier this year about mental wellness.
Go ahead.
It's good for her to be able to take agency about how she's going to, you know, manage her own playing and career and not be bullied into submission when she is the draw, you know. And you know, in every other sport, you know, whoever is at the top, whoever is putting people in the seats, you know, there are basic accommodations that are made. You know, if you're the Tom Brady or the Michael Jordan in those sports, there are accommodations that are made to you. And so if you're Naomi Osaka right now, you know, there's certain accommodations that she's earned the right to get. And her treatment in terms of these press conferences, I just thought it was atrocious. But again, you know, the more you watch her and see how she operates, that even in her struggles through certain things, she has a sense of who she is, and you know, she's a champion. You can't bully her. You know, that's, you know, it's somebody who's gone through that type of training is not somebody who is just to be pushed around. And she just said, I will walk away rather than do it in a way that I feel is harmful to myself. And I just have total respect for that.
Night Watchman, why doesn't she just do what certain right-wing pundits say? Why doesn't she just shut up and volley?
Shut up and volley, huh? Yeah.
Look, the truth of the matter is she probably prefer that. I mean, the obligations that are put upon you to speak and to be forthcoming about almost every aspect of whatever the media feels like intruding upon, is a delicate balance that, like Bob, I think you said it perfectly, should be an accommodation that's given to the actual players on the field or on the court. But nobody sent that memo to the haters of Simone Biles, who couldn't be more beloved, and obviously still got, of course. I mean, send that memo to Piers Morgan. Obviously, he needs a hug.
I think he has not gotten the hugs from those who he wants. He's still pining over Meghan Markle.
It's pretty transparent. He's been, black women are right at the top of his list. I mean, Meghan, Naomi, Simone. He's taking fire on all of them. Yeah.
Well, in his mind, the fact that he thought he had a chance. I don't.
No doubt. Yeah. So here's my question: with certainly the dialogue created around Naomi and Simone or whatever, it's something that certainly we as old heads in terms of sports fans, we never heard about. We never kind of recognize mental health or wellness and sports. So Glenn, tell me about that particular train. Because certainly I do know that Althea dealt with some stuff herself.
Well, no question. I mean, I think what Bob was saying holds merit to a degree. The Tom Brady's, the folks who are never put in a compromising position, at least most of the time, to say anything controversial. No, they don't. They can kind of breeze through things, especially if you're white. But we talked about it before. Curt Flood is a 4-letter word as far as Major League Baseball is concerned. And he was shown no accommodation, of course, as he fought for free agency, which, thank God, he was able, with great sacrifice, with livelihood, to push through, when, unfortunately, his contemporaries wouldn't even side up with him because, people were fear of losing what bag they had. So it's just a shame that even his props, and we're going to be fighting for that as well with the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame.
So, Curt Flood, Colin Kaepernick, those are two people who literally sacrificed their career for the greater good. Althea was someone who competed at the highest level with the most adverse circumstances, being a black woman, having to literally, fight for every inch of respect she got, and you see the toughness that it took to not only compete on the court, but to be able to compete off the court. And then, the thing I learned from you, Glenn, which I didn't know until the documentary, was that she also broke the color barrier in women's golf. And she went to play golf because she could actually make some money in golf, And so, we're also talking about a player, the players who played before the money was in the sport. That's always another challenge. Early players who are in a sport where you could basically maybe make a living, but not make the types of monies that are now available. And this is why it's so important for younger generations to recognize the road that was paved for them.
No, you're exactly right. That frames it perfectly in the sense of there is a history, and look, this goes across. Sports has always been a great model to look at because it is something, at least on the face, is based on meritocracy. It's based on what your talent is and what you can do in the field of play. But of course, that doesn't always matter, and it hadn't mattered for a long time for black folks, and that's why we had to create the Negro Leagues and the American Tennis Association and the United Golf Association, all the other associations that we were excluded from mainstream. Althea's story is, it continues to be a revelation because I just watched a Venus and Serena documentary that was done a few years ago. And the beautiful thing about it is that as much as they would love to avoid saying her name, they have to say, yes, Serena's accolades and accomplishments are the greatest since Althea Gibson broke through in 1956, 57, and 58. So, she will, as the first one to break through, thankfully, she will always get those props. They still always preface anything about tennis, though, with Arthur Ashe, which is no deference, no dismissal of his greatness. But it's amazing that, in a society where we say ladies come first, even when they are first, they don't necessarily get those props. But I'll just say, if you haven't seen it already, I just have to say, because I saw it recently, I'm sorry, Olympic Pride, American Prejudice is an incredible documentary that was done back in 2016. And it just highlights, what do you think of when you say the 1936 Olympics? Well, that was the Berlin Olympics, everybody knows. And the only name
Jesse Owens.
Is Jesse Owens. And the sad part is, there were 17 other Black Olympians with him on that cruise ship and, in Berlin for those games. And many of them medaled, and their stories are unbelievable. The level of excellence, and the beautiful thing is there were two women. Not to slight anybody, but there were two women amongst them, and I think both were also veterans of the 32 games in Los Angeles. So you had those returning champions, and like I say, and the sad part is, one of the women who tried to compete in 32 denied, tried to compete again in 36 was also denied. As you know, the two Jewish runners who didn't get a chance which is where Jesse picked up his third and fourth gold medals, was the fact that they denied the two Jews because, of course, they were in the heart of anti-Semitic Berlin, and that was done on Bunbridge's part, the gentleman who was running U.S. Olympics at the time, who was a complete tyrant.
Well, he did not want to infuriate the Führer. Right. Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
There's that's not going to age well. So,
But
the story of amateur sports in this country really needs a thorough examination. There have been plenty of people who've done it, and it really needs to be kind of focused as we talk about this latest. And I don't know if we've had much conversation about it, but with regards to collegiate sports and the NCAA, the new name, image, and likeness legislation that has gone through several states, about 6 or 7, I think, to date. Even though I think there are, I don't want to say incorrectly, but I think all the Division I schools, definitely in those states, and I think others are participating in what is just, more distraction and exploitation, in my opinion. These are programs and colleges who are literally being funded by Black men playing basketball and football. And we know the pipeline to the professional ranks is almost the only reason that they make that stop in college. And they fund these folks, and these coaches who could never make $8-10 million anywhere else on the planet get to enjoy these lavish lifestyles and have absolutely no, trepidation in saying, Dabo Sweeney, excuse my French, idiot that he is, had the nerve to say, look, they start paying players, I'm out of here, or some nonsense to that extent. And I'm like, Dabo, you should be, let's not go, but he should be thanking each and every one of those parents and the players that come to his school that have supported a lifestyle he would never enjoy otherwise. So, there's a lot to be concerned about, because people I respect are ballyhooing this NIL legislation as if it's some gift to these players. It was rights that never should have been taken away to begin with. Reggie Bush should have his Heisman. There's all types of egregious behavior that's taken place, and it's just more, unfortunately, stolen labor in which folks got enriched and continue as the TV network contracts get bigger and bigger and bigger. And now even Colin Cowherd on Fox, it says it's time to pay the players. It's just been, so we won't take up the whole show talking about that, but there's so many things that are on the table right now, and it's really more than time to lay bare what has been absolute atrocity as far as how these players have been treated and exploited. So,
So you had actually a chance to check out the Olympics this year. Hmm?
Yeah, you know what? I just got back. You know, getting out of Tokyo was tough. Flights, get tested, you know, nasal passport. No, look,
Well,
I tried to watch. It's a mess. I mean, you got 15 channels owned by Universal or NBC or
right.
Right.
who's ever pulling all the strings. And I mean, CNBC, MSNBC. You know, I mean, it's just
Peacock.
USA. It's like, can I just find out where the basketball's at? I mean, can I? And then, of course, you get more than enough hours of swimming. I just can't get enough of the swimming. But
Okay.
you want to see, you know, and then Peacock. I don't want to go there because my girl Amber Ruffin's on there, so I don't want to say that. Yeah, Peacock is a crapshoot. But no, it's you know, the Olympics. I'm so glad. Look, props to Tokyo. I know tons of people didn't want it to happen. I know plenty of Japanese folks were upset, but thank God they got these games off. Because I think
the world needed it. The world
Yes,
needed it. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So what were the storylines that
Yeah.
appealed to you the most out of this particular Olympics?
Well, I mean, look, you know, Simone Biles was the face of the Olympics and will be the face of the Olympics. Probably, you know, Usain Bolt has receded into the background. Simone Biles has been the queen. She's been the GOAT. And of course, this was not the storyline anybody expected. But how could it not have happened? This woman's been under extraordinary pressure for the last 10 years of her life. I mean, the things she's done at the high school and collegiate level, and then to come to the Olympics with every expectation that she's just going to dominate. And to have to, you know, and the sad part is she doesn't get to show up at the actual, you know, finals. You got to go through rounds of competition and, you know, training and rehearsal. I mean, practice. So she's got to flip around in that beam 50,000 times just before she actually competes, and then go through the various rounds to get to the finals of actually looking to get a medal. So, I mean, props off to the fact that she said, you know what? I'm good. I'm not going to take the bait. And
I love seeing I'm seeing these young black women take control and agency and make their own decisions, not based on the pressure, because she was given the added pressure of basically them telling her that they would not reward her for doing moves that no one else can do, under the guise or whatever you want to call it, of saying, well, it's too dangerous and we don't want to, if we reward it, other people might get hurt. Yeah. And then if she decides she doesn't want to do it, well, why are you not doing it? It's like we said, other people
can't win. You can't win here.
Anything about you?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you're referring to this in that respect, but I've been hearing things about the judges actually using a different standard for how she executes versus other competitors. That, that so much is expected of her. I mean, she actually has moves that are named after her because she's the only one who's been able to execute them, and that she's being judged in a harsher way, in a sense. So, I mean, that aside, and I don't want to just make it about Simone Biles, Allison Felix, more medals than anyone. Okay, male or female. And
that's right.
At 35, pushing through, getting on the team, which was no small feat.
After childbirth, that's right.
Beautiful family, just such an inspiring story. I have to give props to my girl, Dalilah Muhammad from Rochdale Village.
Yes.
Love that woman. So, I mean, she's class act. Just a beautiful representation of Queens and this country and New York City. I'm gonna forget this girl's name. The wrestler.
Oh, she was great. She was great.
If you didn't see her moment when she knew she won the medal and the flag and she's talking about it, look, it just
genuine joy.
I mean, and genuine joy. I mean, to be, as usual, black people under siege in so many ways. she is the biggest. I mean, I wouldn't want to play for any other country. USA, USA, and you know, the fact that she, her husband, I believe, is part Ghanaian or Ghanaian by birth, and she beat a Nigerian to win. It was definitely some interplay there that was just fun. She was just spectacular. I mean, just representation. But there were so many great stories. Track and field is always, you know, a big thing, and watching Dalilah Muhammad and Sydney McLaughlin go at it was just mesmerizing. Yeah.
Also, let's give some credit to Coach Bob Kersey, who coached not only coached Allison Felix, but also coached Sydney McLaughlin. And matter of fact, she switched coach for this Olympics and went to him, and that's what made the difference in her. And her great rivalry with Dalilah Muhammad. It was just great to see them. You know, I think that was the race that people wanted to see, and they didn't disappoint. And to see them, you know, get their gold and silver together, and then come back together, and they put the Avengers together for the relay, and they all won gold together. That was just absolutely that was the moment.
And, you know, they were really trying to cause controversy between those two. And no, they said, no, it's nothing like that at all. You know, that, you know, we're sisters going out here trying to accomplish a thing. We challenge each other. We make each other better and at top form. So no controversy to be seen here.
Well, I did hear that Dalilah was behind the locks and Sydney liked Dipset, so I don't know.
Glenn, that was classic. That was good.
There was another feel good story in track, and let us not leave out the women of Jamaica.
Oh my!
Wow!
You know, coming in 1, 2, and 3, you know, and just like this one is ours. You know? So the rivalry again, a camaraderie and rivalry between Jamaican track and the American women's track is also great for the sport. You know, because there's been healthy competition between, you know, both those sets. And Jamaica is a small island, but when it comes to Olympic, especially in track, they bring it.
Well, hold it. NightWatchman, you did hear the breaking news coming out of Tokyo that after they won, right, and swept the 100-meter in track and field, the Olympic Committee has now banned the use of illicit drugs known as ackee and salt fish with green bananas, yam, dashi, and dumplings. It's gone. It's gone. They said nothing about ganja, but yes, all those are gone.
Well, we know the ganja was a problem because that was the problem our girl.
You know, can you believe it? So I'm thinking about how faster would she have gone without ganja?
Well,
you know, I mean,
it's so ridiculous on so many levels that qualifying situation for Sha'Carri, who, you know, has been an absolute, you know, monster in terms of how she's handled it. Just moving on in more commercials than anybody else. I mean, I'm watching her, you know, doing commercials, and I mean, she's going to be fine. There was a moment in time, and you know, another teachable moment in one respect, but a time to have some real conversation about, you know, these arcane rules that have been still in effect and still rule, unfortunately, in a game that's moved on.
Especially as you say, Glenn, it's not a performance-enhancing drug.
Not unless you're eating Doritos or making love. I mean, it's just, you know, it doesn't work that way, you know.
Oh man. So now, one of the things that we didn't mention. Now, I consider it a sport like you, and that's F1.
Oh yeah.
Wait,
before we leave this, I think we also want to make mention about Allison Felix and the move she made with regard to her shoes.
Oh, the Nike, absolutely, heck yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Nike was like, yeah, you're too old, you're pregnant, you know, we're moving on, and she's like, no, I'm moving on.
Right.
So, as now as the most decorated athlete in terms of track
Yeah.
in history, and she was not wearing the swoop. She was wearing her own shoes, and that to me is also a step forward where we can see, um, you know, see these great athletes take financial
Ownership. That's right.
advantage and
Hmm.
ownership and equity in what they have instead of just building a bigger brand for somebody else and taking a little check on the back end.
Well,
Yeah.
she should have pulled a Jordan and thrown the flag over that swoosh on her jacket because Nike did have the outfits, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Couldn't get that. But I do have to mention on that note, I got to mention my boy KD. He's my favorite player.
Yeah.
Olympic basketball team.
Yep.
Not
Yep.
too. I'm sorry. I didn't want to short trip Allison Felix. Did you have anything else you wanted to throw on
No,
that?
I just wanted to say that in addition to her triumphs, there was a triumph of spirit. It was a triumph of business that she's got her own line, and it's like I don't, the idea that you don't need Nike,
Oh, please. Yeah.
is important. And the idea of ownership of your own brand, which is something that else came in, and to take another analogy that's not coming from sports but coming from entertainment, which sports is a part of. This week it was announced that Rihanna is now a billionaire, and she's a billionaire because of her brand. And with her brand, it's a partnership. So she owns half of her brand, which she is in partnership with LVMH, which is the largest luxury company in the world. And I like to compare her deal to Michael Jordan's deal. Now it's apples and oranges because Michael Jordan broke the mold in terms
That's
of
right.
deals.
And another era. You're right.
Right. And Michael Jordan has been paid over $1 billion under his Nike contract, which started out as $500,000 a year. So it obviously ballooned on him. And he still makes way more every year than every NBA player. He makes $130 million a year off of his brand. So I'm not trying to say that Michael has a bad contract, but the thing is, Michael does not have ownership in the Jordan brand. The Jordan brand is owned by Nike, and the brand itself is probably worth about $10 billion. And if he had Rihanna's deal, which he wouldn't have gotten back then, but he would have $5 billion worth of value just in the brand. So to see the that we're going forward and athletes are starting to get better deals by recognizing that they're the ones that are bringing the attention and equity to the brand is a real important thing for us to see.
Well, I mean, so well put, Bob. The sad part is that, needless to say, if Curt Flood's efforts and sacrifices had been better embraced, there might have been other people in the room with Jordan that could have structured a better deal. Knowing the value and knowing where, basketball had some rocky moments, that they were coming out of thanks to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and Michael obviously elevated to a whole different level.
Correct.
The ability to see, and look, for me, freedom will come when Black people are buying, athletic shoes made by Black people, because we've given so much to Phil Knight and his offspring. It's a shame. I mean, I've got a couple of pairs of Nike shoes, and I'm sorry to say that I have them. I mean, quite honestly, that's been an atrocity for all the money we've made, for all the culture we've brought under that swoosh, unfortunately, around the world, and to not have a piece of it, like you say, Bob, in some meaningful way. At some point we're going to create our own shoe brand, and it'll happen. This generation is already in the mix on that. Sorry.
And they'll be made by Chinese people, but they'll be owned by Black people.
No, look, this is one of this. We're going to bring it back to Africa. Everything's going to end up. That is the full circle here. That China will ultimately be their own worst enemy, because what's amazing is that China, who had a one-child policy, is now trying to have some kids. They're doing everything they can. They're like, oh, we're losing ground here. We got to get some kids going. So they're pushing all types of, look, get some more babies going, get marriages going. China's a trip. But no.
Well, they did very well in the Olympics. I think they were second to us, huh?
Oh, as far as gold medals, they were the number one.
Wow. And so what is this also, this little banner, ROC? So you're not Russia because you had the
Jay-Z?
That's right. You had the doping scandal, so we'll rebrand it ROC, huh?
Hey, look, if I have any inkling at all, Jay-Z will find some way to leverage that. he will do some deal with Putin that we won't hear about until and be able to parlay. He's going to some kind of there'll be some trademark infringement there. But no, look, the Russians. This is their as far as the Olympics. This is their Super Bowl, World Series, everything. I mean. They get to invest heavily behind these athletes. They get to control them, unfortunately, in so many ways, of course. And it's well, I mean, the situation in Taipei or Taiwan or whatever, people are talking about the politics of showing up with their ships in the bay there because if they don't get their way with Chinese negotiations, there's so much to be said for what China is doing or trying to do, and it's a quagmire in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
But hopefully the shoes won't be made by Chinese fans.
Got it. So now going over to F1. So right now Lewis is in the lead. Still, I guess half of the season left to actually compete. Your thoughts?
Look, I mean, boy, so glad you brought that up, Curtis. No, I mean, look, I love F1. I love Formula One. I wouldn't if Lewis Hamilton wasn't, the GOAT, in that respect. What he's done for that sport is immeasurable. And, for the folks who want to utter or usher him out the door, they better hope he sticks around for a long, long time. And right now he's got a new contract for the next 2 years, which is just fantastic because, who's going to be the face of the sport if he's not there? And quite honestly, he brings so much. I mean, you had Tom Cruise sitting in the Mercedes garage. Harrison Ford was hanging out with the Williams folks. But, the attraction of celebrity, the attraction of obviously what he's doing right now with this Hamilton Commission report, which has been really important work, talking about disparities that were probably very well known by most, but had never been published and documented the way they have. It's been sending shockwaves. And,
back up. Do give us an overview of the Hamilton report.
Oh boy, I wish I had those statistics off the top. I'll just say this: they were showing, I think, literally only 1% of F1 positions almost less than 1% are held by people of color, by Black people. Throw some brown folks in there, but you may be able to pull that up, Bob. I appreciate it, but it's been quite revealing, and I think for Lewis, this is the kind of thing where if he didn't have the stature and obviously the position that he holds in the sport, nobody would care. I mean, quite honestly, I'm sure Bubba Wallace would like to say a little more than he said, but he's going to need a few titles under his belt before he really leverage that appropriately. Because sadly, I mean, look, Venus and Serena, they could have come out and done they could have done a third of what they've accomplished and been the greatest American champions for a generation. But unless you have that unquestionable status as the best in the game,
exactly.
Really.
That's the real platform. You're absolutely right.
And unfortunately, that's the standard that we have to hold in order to have the ability to speak on it. Kurt Flood couldn't have said anything unless he was the best outfielder in the game at the time.
Correct.
He sacrificed the most. He was making $100,000 in the late 60s. He said, "You know what? I got 7 Gold Gloves. I got plenty of All-Stars. I'm good. I don't have to take up this fight. I'm getting paid." But those slave owners, that is the Bush family, Augustus Bush, and look at Bob, you are too good.
Yeah, he is.
But just to say that is the question going forward. Who will be our allies when it isn't the GOAT talking about these issues? Are there going to be white allies who are willing to take up the mantle and say, you know what, this injustice has just gone on too far, and we've got a level of. Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Yes, I just want to read this preamble. The type is too small for us older. So, as the first black driver in Formula One, Sir Lewis Hamilton was always aware of the lack of diversity across the motorsport industry. But this underrepresentation is not just limited to the driver pool and also includes those who work in the garage and the engineers in the factories too. After reviewing the lack of diversity within the end of season photo in 2019, Lewis was spurred to take action and set out to understand the specific barriers to the recruitment and progression of black people within UK motorsport. Lewis has always been vocal about the need for real industry-wide change, but in order to make the change himself happen, he needed to know the facts. As a result, Lewis formed the Hamilton Commission alongside the Royal Academy of Engineering, which presented an opportunity to simultaneously address the underrepresentation of black people in UK motorsport as well as the STEM sector. That's
very good. Yes.
That's heavy.
Thank you, Lewis. Now, yes, you definitely can say that. And I did notice that Sir Lewis. So he was knighted by the Queen.
Oh, please. Well, you know what? I've been trying to find that video of the actual knighthood of the knighting, and I haven't been able to find it. I hope there's. I'm assuming somebody was on the scene taking pictures. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's interesting to hear. Obviously, the UK broadcasters talk about Lewis. He's been the greatest sports icon in Great Britain. Mo Farah
since Lennox Lewis.
Well, I think Mo Farah is probably even more contemporary, the distance runner. I think, they're probably close. And then the other brother, the boxer, Joshua.
Oh, right, yeah.
He's gotten a couple of, even though he should have all his credits taken away after losing to that refrigerator that he got. But anyway, that's another story. But thank you for bringing that commission report preamble up, because this is, and the great thing about Lewis is that, number one, he loves, obviously, American. He understands the gravity and the importance of American social justice history. It was the Black Lives Matter movement, of course, and the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery that moved him to create that Black Lives Matter moment in Formula One and taking a knee, and all of the proposals that he's made in terms of public display, which, of course, put a lot of people on edge. We were lucky enough to have in the clubhouse room Jake Paul, who was the graphics art director who created the "We Race as One" logo, and which he's obviously very proud of and should be. And thank God he was on the scene to do it. And that's always about who's in the room, who's actually there to take up the mantle and make things happen that need to happen. So, really important stuff going on.
So here's a little quick question. Now, he may be coming on one of our latest shows, and that's going to be Bill Rhoden, $40 million slave, right?
What?
So yeah. So one of the.
That's all.
No. Night Watchman, we're definitely going to extend an invitation to Glenn, so for that show.
Get back on the couch. I'll just wait. That's fantastic, because he's going to be part of our campaign as we try to move some things forward. We hope so.
Okay.
A lot of
one of the things that actually is pointed out in the book is the fact that blacks initially may be, let's say, the trailblazers, the trendsetters in certain sports, aka horse racing, aka cycling, whatnot. Then suddenly rules are then changed.
Absolutely.
Okay, and thus use I don't want to even go further, but I just want to ask now about Major League Baseball.
Sure.
How our numbers are so abysmal there. Is it because now there is a pipeline to South America and the Caribbean countries that there's no emphasis on African Americans in baseball, Major League Baseball anymore, or what? Do tell.
I'm gonna speak
Go
on
ahead.
that because that's a question. I was privileged to have conversations with the late Bob Watson about this. This is an
Okay.
issue that he was very near and dear to. And Bob Watson grew up in an era where, black people played a lot of baseball. He came out from the streets of Los Angeles, and he came up with a bunch of folks who ended up in the major leagues. And, after being general manager of the Yankees, general manager of the Astros, he spent many years in Major League Baseball's, upper echelon. And one of the things he talked about was the fact that, the top athletes, all the sports compete with them. And baseball, when it, first of all, there's the cool factor and the money. Baseball has usually had the money, but you get that top athlete comes out, he can play baseball, he can play football, he can play basketball. Which is he going to pick? Well, basketball took the cool factor. Football, again, became much more of America's pastime than baseball was over the last several decades. So part of it was a marketing effort. Certainly, the Hispanic influence is a factor, but that's been going on for a long time. So, that's just driven by the fact that those cultures, baseball is the way out. That's the upward mobility. You take a lot less damage than boxing and, live a lot better lifestyle. So, you have more of a drive, and there's also a culture down in those islands that is supporting it. So if you're, in Dominican Republic, you might be playing on a dirt lot, but you're being coached by somebody who's in the major leagues and is retired. And so there's that domain knowledge that exists down there, where we might have used to have that in different, places in the U.S., but that's why they started, I think, the RBI program and some of these other programs to encourage more urban participation. But baseball in general has had a marketing problem over the last several decades, and they haven't had the compelling stars that grab the attention the way they've had in the past.
Well, I just got to say, so much well said, Bob, and rest in peace and props to Bob Watson and his legacy, which somebody.
Oh, by the way, he was just inducted the last week into the Houston Astros Hall of Fame. So they had a ceremony last Saturday where he was brought into that. So.
No, there's so much to be said with regards to knowing the history of baseball. That was the one sport that I was brought up in. My father and my brother played. At some pretty high levels. I had a chance to play in high school, and was supposed to play up at Dartmouth, which is a funny story, but I won't bore you with that. But yeah, the shame of it is, number one, all of our best athletes, obviously Jackie Robinson and a whole lot of them, all played baseball. They ran track, they played football. The most talented, played every sport. And even in today's game, you've had obviously all of the best quarterbacks in football: Patrick Mahomes, Jameis Winston, Kyler Murray. They all played baseball. These are guys who, when we broke in from the Negro League, number one, the style of play was stolen from the Negro Leagues. That is,
what we're seeing today.
Right? The small ball, the speed of play, all of the incredible excitement that comes through baseball has come from the Negro Leagues. And the mere fact that once we were able to infiltrate the major leagues, we were taking all the MVPs. We just, the MVP class for the 60s and early 70s is all black.
Right. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron,
Willie McCovey, you name it.
Roberto Clemente.
I mean, and the sad part is the discrimination against, the pitchers as they were against quarterbacks. It's always that's the lead guy, that's the main guy. So the rarities that we had, the incredible pitchers that we had, obviously with Bob Gibson as one of the stalwarts. Those things I think we're seeing as, once again, I mean, with Bowie Kuhn and the racists that always seem to occupy the commissioner's office, we're seeing as a problem. And there was pushback, and there was lack of support, and the whole nonsense with the steroid era, which all the owners were complicit in. And Bud Selig had no issue with, because baseball was on a deathbed. They when they hired Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa brought it back to life. Yeah, these guys were juiced. Okay.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But I'm just saying, you're going to tell me that Barry Bonds, who was a 4-time MVP, a 5-tool guy, gold gloves up the yin yang, everything you could say. And I loved him. I mean, he was my favorite player. His father was my favorite player, Bobby Bonds. Another 5-tool guy who, didn't get treated right by the game. Got his props or flowers if you want. But the bottom line is, you're going to try to deny Barry Bonds. What Barry Bonds did when he was hitting 71, 72 home runs, no one else could do. If everybody could do it by taking steroids, they'd be doing it. This guy was hitting 2 pitches a game in the strike zone and sending them out to the water. I mean, it was ridiculous. So, I mean, the mere fact that the shift has been made, and look, the RBI program, needless to say, was more of a PR stunt. It wasn't about finding the best and brightest. Look, we saw how the Chicago kids when the Little League World Series was treated. I mean, they did everything in their power to take away the dream of these kids because of what? Some zip codes or some not? I mean, what the hell was, So it's always something. And baseball is going to, they're going to lose. Look, do you think baseball would like to find another Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders playing 2 sports at the same time, bringing unbelievable light bulbs to their sport? Are you kidding me? People following Deion Sanders as he jumps in a helicopter and goes from a football playoff game to a baseball play. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And these are guys who could be promoting the sport. Could be, I mean, Bo Jackson, thank God, he's still in good shape and looks great. Deion, of course, is coaching down at Jackson State and doing great things. Right. But these guys who, I mean, if they had the time and ability, they probably played 3 sports. But the mere fact that you're not having John Elway was touted as some great potential Yankee or baseball player. He didn't play 2 sports. All these, it's brothers who are out there killing it, and they're the ones who are bringing the culture as well as the limelight to most of these sports and all sports. Look, we'd love to have LeBron or somebody like him wanting to play tennis. I mean, we'd love to see these guys infiltrate other sports, and thank God they do. I mean, we do get them now and then, but yeah, it's a shame that baseball has resided in the fact that, hey, we can have these teams in the Caribbean and South America that we don't have to have any age restrictions on, so we can get them as early as 13, 14 years old.
So having said that, then you don't necessarily think that the African American baseball player will return, certainly at those high point numbers that were so prominent before.
Right. Well, I mean, look, I mean, we don't have a feeder system like the Negro Leagues, unfortunately, which is sad. And I'm not sure. I apologize for not knowing better what the HBCU baseball landscape looks like. I mean, I have no idea. But baseball makes it tough in the sense that you have to come through potentially minor league play.
Right, that's right. The farm system.
Unless you're just a prodigious, kind of prodigy type talent that can be put on immediately. But if they had these greats, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, any number of these guys promoting the game and telling you, hey, these $200 million contracts that the NBA is finally getting, we had those 20 years ago. I mean, we've had guys making Alex Rodriguez. I mean, these contracts have been huge forever. And like Bob said, you come out of baseball in pretty good shape, usually. I mean, your knees are still working for the most part. I mean, definitely a sport that can allow you to play for a long time. and to make some real serious money. Yeah.
So
There were a couple of these contracts, like who's this guy who used to play for the Mets? It's George. I remember somebody.
I mean, George Foster.
George Foster.
George Foster.
Right.
Yep.
He was paid years and years and years and years after he retired. Some of those contracts back then.
Bobby Bonilla $1 million.
Yeah, the Bobby Bonilla contract.
Bobby's picking up his check every. Bobby, one of the B's from Pittsburgh with Barry.
Absolutely.
He still picks $1 million check. He's like, thanks, guys.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, baseball has got the main issue with baseball is their commissioners. There have been some good ones, but Bob Manfred, I don't have a whole lot of positives to say. I think he still believes that the owners run the game. He's still living kind of back in the 50s, and in my opinion, that's just my opinion. I'm not owned by anybody. Thank you, Althea. So I don't care. But no, I think it's a problem where there still is a feeling like they're always going to still have the enjoyment of the fans, even if they don't have quote unquote African American players on the field. And of course, all the Latino players look like us. I mean, I mean they're either mixed or they're just about.
We're about to wrap up actually, but before we end things, I do want to talk about one thing. I saw this trailer for the film that's coming out this year, King Richard.
Yes.
Is that Shakespeare thing? Is that it? Okay.
Well, they got this unknown actor. His name is Will Smith, and he's talking about these unknown two young tennis players. I think their name was Venus and Serena. And I think the film is going to do okay.
I think so too. Yeah, you know what? From what I've seen in terms of the trailer, looks like Will is actually exercising his chops.
Look, that trailer is hot. I saw that trailer. I was like, before I got to the end of it, I'm in. When is this thing coming out? And that was pretty much the reaction that everybody who I've talked about, who's seen it, shared it on social media. I think this film is going to perform very, very well. It's obviously a story that we grew up with, watching these two young girls turn into these amazing women and amazing athletes
and change the game, the face of the game.
But also finally having the story of Richard Williams, the story of a father and his love for his daughters, and how he molded not one but two champions.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, thanks, Bob. I didn't realize we had already. Boy, it's a half-hour show. What are you doing?
Time flies when you're having fun.
Well, Glenn, one thing I do know is that you are coming back on the show specifically to actually talk about that experience in the film. Okay?
No question about it. I'll just quickly, two things. One, thank God, Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith, the Overbrook folks have continued to pursue this and made it happen because there were some hiccups. Some representation of Richard Williams had some issues. There was a little bit of controversy about who also had rights to the story and all of that, but they pushed through. People who had pushback on Will Smith playing the role because he wasn't dark enough or he wasn't, he didn't look the part or some nonsense. He's going to get some serious accolades, I think, some good critique. Okay. And quite honestly, Richard and Oracine need to get their props, and ultimately we will come back and talk about a push to get them into the International Tennis Hall of Fame, because that's an overdue and oversight that needs to be corrected immediately. So I think it's going to do well. I think it's going to do very well.
So we look forward to probably seeing you again. The Open is coming up in the not too distant future, and I think that's a great time to have you back, and we can talk about what's going on as well as talking about those developments. So thank you, Glenn Gilliam.
That's right. And don't say guess. Say third wheel. Third wheel. Okay, there you go.
That's kind of I think we got to get a
better handle,
better harmony.
Okay.
Third wheel.
You
Third
got
wheel.
Bob, I'm still gonna push for our version of verses. I want to say
right. Well,
we got to get something going on that.
We got to deal with the rights issues on that, but we'll go into the laboratory.
Always the legalities. Okay. Let's do it and ask questions later.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
it. That's it.
Always appreciate being on. Appreciate it.
So this has been Slow Lounge Prime Time on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Also live on YouTube and Facebook. We're on 7 o'clock on the radio on Monday nights, and we're on 8 o'clock on social media on Monday nights. So hope you're spending your Monday nights with us. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.